All right, tonight on the Big Go Belt Wrestling Podcast, time to cover AEW Revolution. We're going to talk about highlights here. Toni Storm and Mariah May with a violent end to their feud that's been happening over the last few months. And then we have NXT and TNA taking over NYC. So much more to cover tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, strap in. We have a loaded episode tonight. Let's get started. Big Go Bell, 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 Big Go Bell. All I really want is that Big Go Bell, 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 Big Go Bell. All I really need that Big Go Bell. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Big Go Belt Wrestling Podcast. We are your hosts tonight. I'm Nigeria in the middle. Jamal over here to my right. Silly Sellers over to the left. We will be carrying through all of our topics for this week of pro wrestling talks. Gentlemen, how you doing tonight?
Yeah, pretty good, man. How are you?
Doing good over here too.
Awesome. First and foremost, while we're looking at the sheet for tonight, there's definitely a couple of other things I want to touch on, but we'll definitely tackle that. We have a little bit of time at our within our hour show, but definitely starting off by talking about AEW Revolution happened over the weekend. First and foremost here, let's get the temperature in terms of where we're at with AEW, because there's definitely been a lot of hot and cold moments, and there's definitely been a lot of commentary about in terms of their booking and their production and even their focus even at time. I saw an interesting take today about the Jacksonville Jaguars and how their struggle seems to be not so much within focus of Tony Khan's. But nonetheless, where we at with AEW? Jamal, we'll start with you. How you been feeling about the product lately?
I think it's unfortunate that AEW started out the way they started out, trying to be an alternative, a viable alternative in the North American scene. They went to the table, built themselves a chair, elbowed their way to the table just to turn into the thing that they were trying not to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's painfully obvious now that even when they had more WWE stars, even when they had, or like ex-WWE people, the variety of the show was really what set them out. The wrestling is the wrestling. Anywhere that you want to watch wrestling, whether it's in Thailand or Japan or China or Singapore or even in a dusty field in Uganda, it's still wrestling. So what made AEW special was the fact that they were trying to be something that they wound up, turning out to be. And that's the saddest part about it. Now, of course, all these years later, they survived COVID. They, survive, scandal and intrigue and stuff like that. And now it's just the third hour or the fourth hour of SmackDown. I mean, that's really what it feels like. It doesn't really feel like, a separate product. Like, it just feels like somebody trying to do a WWE style show without the actual WWE ingredients. This is how you get like that one Powerpuff Girl that was, a mutant because you couldn't reverse engineer the sugar, spice, and everything nice. And then of course, Liquid X and all that, you couldn't get that. So you had to make something your own. Now that's going to sound like a diss. That's going to sound like, oh shit, they just hating on AEW. They're just WWE Marxist. They don't really know ball. Like, okay. Realistically, if I want to watch the indies and want to watch the product that is of that production value, of that wrestling acumen, whatever that type is, I can just watch the indies. if I want to watch the very, very WWE product, then I can just watch that. Where does AEW fit in? Because they don't really do anything well enough to stand on their own. And unfortunately, the only thing that their stars have done has just gotten older. So do we really want to see a Young Bucks run at 40? Why are they the Young Bucks? They're 40. Do we want to see Kenny Omega in a championship run? Do we really need that before he retires? I've been begging for AEW to invest in young talent since COVID, since the end of COVID. That's the route that they need to go in. And what do? They cancel Dark. Okay, sure, fine. But what do? They get in bed with Stardom when Tokyo Joshi Pro was more of their style, but Stardom had the prestige. So, what do? They cancel Rampage, but then they make Collision the second show, and they negotiate an okay deal with TNT and the Warners. It's just not clicking for me. You said you want to check the temperature. I think we need to check the pulse, to be honest with you, to see if AEW is still kicking. And yes, if you have your favorites, and this is actually be the question that I will put to the audience, let us know if you're watching AEW weekly. Hell, if you're paying $25, $50 for the pay-per-view, what draws you to AEW? What is that thing that makes you go, it's Wednesday night, so you know what that means and mean it? Yeah. Because that used to be something that I can define, something that I can put my finger on, and I can't do that anymore.
Let's get your thoughts in here real quick.
I gotta give it to Jamal. He got a lot of great thoughts in there. I would agree that checking the temperature is probably not the word, and I'm gonna agree with saying checking the pulse. But here's how I see how AEW is right now. We were all there when it first started in Washington, D.C., and we were all excited because of something that we thought was going to be new or an alternative to what we would call mainstream programming of WWE. And the way I looked at it early on was like WCW. Like, okay, this is something new. This is something fresh. You're pulling in some WWE stars, some recognizable names, and you're doing something different. But then at some point, you just got lost in the sauce because you couldn't veer or be consistent on what that difference was or what that identity could be. But then I thought it also felt like TNA for a second. So remember when TNA, okay, let's get Hulk Hogan over here. Let's get Kurt Angle. Let's get some of these WWE names and just try to make this competitive product against WWE. But then that also failed too. So it's like now, and once again, surviving through COVID and things of that nature, well, that was hard for anybody to do. And the stadium stampede matches and everything of that nature was something that was intriguing, but it's like, where do you go? And it was just no consistency that you saw that was being built. You did not see megastars being built. I mean, Swerve Strickland is probably the biggest star that was probably built in the whole tenure of, somebody making it to the top, being a world champion from in a way scratch, because he wasn't really that big in WWE at the time. But it's just nothing ever stuck out where it made me want to say, I need to watch this every Wednesday. Definitely not pay for any of those pay-per-views as for $25 and $50. But I'm still hopeful that at some point it's something that can be recognized for AEW where it still makes it different. But if I was to say temperature to answer your question, I would say very, very cold. And it's almost to the point of freezing now, where if it's freezing, it's like, let me shut that freezer and I don't want to open it up again until you expire. But it's sad because of the momentum and the energy and the crowd when we were all there on that opening night in October to where we are now, almost 6 years later. It's heartbreaking in a way because you really, really had hope.
I'm just going to quickly say that I find myself sort of in a conflict with the product because the match deal definitely does help because even for some of the pay-per-views that I did not go back, that I didn't watch the entire thing, and I was as we talk about Revolution in a minute, I have really become a fan where it's like I'm keying in on a match and I'm watching that match and then I'm out. And that's my way of supporting, just it's like, hey, I see this match on paper and I've been following this storyline both via the socials and via what I'm able to catch on the televised program, which, to be very clear, is only Dynamite. That's the only thing I'm watching. I tried to watch a catalog of Rampage going through on Max. That didn't sit well for whatever reason. Rampage feels like its own universe, and maybe that's by design, but it just never feels like the tone, the continuity, everything, even the production at times feels very consistent with Dynamite and the pay-per-view. That's no here nor there. But what I'm thinking about it, because I definitely think for a while I thought like, oh, it's Tony Khan, and he's just a fanboy booking for Reddit, and that's why the product looks the way it does. I'm starting to think too. Well, let me say, I'm starting to think now that it may be less Tony Khan and maybe more about the business that surrounds him. I know a lot of his goals was to really advocate for his roster, his folks, his friends, and these deals that he's trying to solidify means that he has to put himself on the line and present a product in order for them to want to get in bed with, per se. And when you look at what WWE has been able to do with Netflix, I mean, that's sort of the bar. That's really, outside of Saudi Arabia and everything they're doing with combat sports, WWE and what they're doing with Netflix is really what everybody's keying in on in terms of like, this is, not only is this sort of revolutionary in terms of like the sort of deals that are being made today, but like the money that's being thrown at this is unlike anything we've ever seen. And I think with him trying to, work this deal with Max, and Max looking across the board. Also, Max has been hella broke for a while. Let's not forget about that. I think it just ends up becoming a situation where he had to do a lot of people pleasing in order to get the product where it needed to be, in order for it to be to a point for them to have interest in the way they did. I remember when we talked about the press release about them solidifying the Max deal, there was some really tricky language was in there. And it definitely seemed like a lot of what Matt says. Yeah. But also these are really on our terms, and even to the point when Warner Brothers Discovery was doing their keynotes, even how AEW is more or less presented less within that sports sort of complex of things that they had going on, and more on their sort of library entertainment side of things, which is, I'm sure, not what Tony Khan's vision was. But again, when you're looking at what your competitors are doing and you see it's going right, you're like, we need to position ourselves in that. And I think that has been a ripple effect down the board. It's nothing to do with the wrestlers, because they're going to go out there and do what they're going to do. And honestly, it's hard to blame anybody when you know that there's somebody has a boss, somebody's answering to somebody, and you can throw all the names out there and who you think is involved, but ultimately whoever's cutting the top check is the one that's making the top call, whether they have the utmost investment in the product or not. As long as the account turns green, they're good. And that's what I'm starting to see is the shift and change with everything, because to Jamal's point, when the YouTube stuff went away, that was the first sign that there was a content control in effect. When ROH wasn't never really a part of the deal, that showed you a lack of interest in pro wrestling, because ROH has never been entertainment to any extent. No means. So why do I need that? It doesn't quite fit the mold, you know what I mean? So, and then we started to see the shift in how things were being presented, how storylines were being handled, and so on. And it works for some people, and then for others it don't. And then there's also some that's in the purgatory that's just still trying to find their way. So I think it's a little bit of a crisis with them. But I definitely don't think at this rate now, I don't think there's anything with the roster to be blamed here. I think it's this, they look to their boss, and their boss is answering to somebody else, or at least across the table from somebody else, and they just never been able to work on a deal that aligns with the visions. We're just co-functioning right now for the sake of money.
Now, to be fair, Tony Khan as a wrestling promoter is 6 years into the game versus whatever he plans to do for the rest of his life. And it's easy to take that for granted when you have the people in WWE that are running the show, even now, have 30, 40 years experience in that position as a showrunner for WWE. How long has Triple H been doing the talent development thing? 10 years at this point? How long has Shawn Michaels been in that position? Since NXT first started, 10, 12, 15 years now at this point. So, one thing, and it's easy to do that. And even in TNA, before Scott D'Amore left, Scott D'Amore has been doing that for 25 years or so. Even back to WWE, Paul Heyman's been in that position where Tony Khan is, and he did that, 25 years ago. So it's a lot of things that you can go, well, damn, how come so many people get it right? And it was still, I got to give it the credit to Scott D'Amore. Maple Leaf Pro, absolutely doing his thing up there in Canada. But for what it's worth, Khan doesn't have 40 years experience. He doesn't come from a wrestling, intensive background. He wasn't born into the business like the McMahon, legacy is. He didn't marry into the business like Triple H did. So, and he wasn't like, the poster boy for the business. So him coming in and this analytical, his fandom / nerdiness being meshed with his ability to crunch the numbers, and it hits like two trucks on the highway, and then thus AEW is born. And obviously with the money putting him in front of the right people at the right time, he's still not spending his money, so he needs to appease some people, and that is what it is too. Obviously, this isn't like an indictment.
A lot of what it is, just my speculation is that it becomes 100%. Less about I have the money and I own it to like, yeah, we all have money, but at the end of the day, you need me more than I need you.
Right.
This is what it's got to be.
Right. And we know that's the case because every time that the Warners preempt Dynamite for another sport, tells you what it is. That's just that. Let's go Grand Slam Australia. And again, it's going to, but this has got to be another check mark, bullet point, learning curve. Hey, we did this. We will not do this again because of the way it was distributed on TV. Yeah. Could the show have been live around the world on HBO Max at 5 a.m. in the US, 6 p.m. local time in Australia? Yeah. And I say this because a couple weeks later, rugby started in Vegas, live from Allegiant Stadium, live to America on Fox Sports 2, live to Australia on Channel 9, and everybody that wanted to watched at the same time. And they still have their issues with the game, with drumming up, U.S. support. They didn't sell it out, didn't even come close. But the point is that, damn, they did that. And they did it live to Australia. So it can be done. Yeah. That was one thing that Grand Slam didn't have going on for it. Also, the scaling down of the event. It was supposed to be at a major rugby league stadium, Suncorp in Brisbane. And then it went to the Waffle House down the street. 56,000 and 13,000 are not the same number.
Yeah. Real quickly, I'll just say, I feel like that may be two different issues, though, but nonetheless issues.
Well, I don't know. It's the same issue because of the fact that they announced that they were going to be at Suncorp Stadium. That wasn't something that people just made up and that was wishful thinking. That was what it was announced, and then it was also announced that they had changed the venue.
Can I also say, because I mean, like there's no denying the international markets are hungry.
Mhm.
WWE has proven that over and over.
Their pay-per-view schedule, everything.
In Australia, independent wrestling is thriving.
Absolutely. PWA. Shout out to the boys down there.
And if they're thriving, that means because there's fans. I mean, there's fans and people want to spend money. And having folks in Australia, I talk all the time about like how sometimes we're sort of very fortunate to when artists do concerts, how we can always expect that they hit major markets, and they're just over there salivating like, man, we just hope they come over here and hit
their major market is Singapore, which is an 8-hour flight.
But let me ask this question, because something that you guys both saying. Oh, okay, go ahead.
To a point though, but so it's a fail when you either, I don't know if it's marketing or whatever it is, but like it's absolute fail if you can't lock in and sell out the biggest and best available, considering and knowing that market in Australia, no matter the city, is always ready to spend the dollars, because they are always essentially they're starved for entertainment in anything. So I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point there. But the only thing I was going to really quickly say before that was that I'm also going to take a look at Warner Bros. Discovery here and point the finger, because I feel like there's a lot that they can do. One, to get themselves out of debt, but two, like it should be more of a partnership. We talk a lot about the partnership with AEW.
We've been asking for synergy for 5 years now.
Yeah, now I'm looking at Max. I'm like, y'all could be doing a lot more. The Last of Us just had the biggest trailer drop, maybe of all time. But nonetheless, huge numbers. The Last of Us should be on Dynamite every week until that show comes out. Marketing, conjunction between the talent. I don't care what it is. Grow the synergy, because you will get people to start taking a look over at the product more. And I just think they do a better. They need to do a more healthier job, to the point that what Netflix did with WWE, that folks are like, I'm back into wrestling. It's not that Netflix and WWE are so much on another level that same sort of energy can come from folks who have Max and says, wow, I'm back into wrestling. It's just not happening. And I think it's a Max thing on that one.
And let me get this real quick, Marcelo. So I just want to make one point. We went to Orlando for, I want to say it was Revolution, maybe
it was,
but we went to Orlando, and we were on a college campus, University of Central Florida. We went to their arena. The pay-per-view was fine. We enjoyed it. The walk back across campus was Florida, but the point was, the first thing we said when we got there was, damn, it's dead here. It's a college campus. It's AEW. They attract a young audience. Even before the Australia thing, even before, all the other things that you could argue, whether it's lack of exposure or talent or whatever. When we got to Orlando and we got to the venue, which is in the middle of a college campus, east of Orlando in Central Florida, we said, damn, AEW should be doing more. And one thing that I remember and that will stick with me was that they had one of the kids from the college newspaper in the media scrum after the show. And he asked a lot of questions that were relevant to AEW's engagement with the local community as they are trying to build the show. Did they include the UCF, marching band, school spirit, pom-pom, rah-rah team, whatever, football, basketball, baseball, hockey? No, they just did the pay-per-view and went home. And that is a hell of a missed opportunity, especially when they go to these smaller towns. They were just in Fresno. They were down there in Orlando. They were in fucking Green Bay or some Bismarck, North Dakota, or some really small town. You gotta hype that up, and you can't just assume that you're going to sell out every show, because we know they're not. We know that's why they're running the entertainment and sports arena and not coming downtown to Capital One. So there needs to be more boots on the ground engagement, other than just going to your local radio show and maybe talking to a DJ and giving away free tickets. Get into the high schools, get into the colleges, get into the the girls clubs, the boys clubs, get into the PAL leagues. talk to the fire department, talk to, this thing needs to be grassroots from the bottom up in the same way that WWE, ECW, all the major players used to do. Get out there and tell a friend, and I think that would help. The community engagement would go a long way. And I don't mean AEW heels. I mean actual community engagements, several steps beyond that. And I think the AEW's never really embraced that. And for somebody that started out brand new with really no identity, because we're still arguing about what's their identity 6 years into the game. That's not it. I think that would go a long way to helping out to A, discover new fans, and B, listening to what people want. A lot of people like to shit on the crowds for not being engaged and stuff like that. Well, if you know the crowd that you're going to get, you can tailor that show, because you know that a hot crowd in Philly is going to be very different than a hot crowd in Wichita. But I think that those analytics is something that either Khan doesn't respect, doesn't care, or doesn't know. And I doubt that he doesn't know that bit of those metrics. Go ahead, Silas.
So here's the one thing, and you guys have danced around what I'm about to ask, but I want to hit back on something that you both kind of spoke to when you talk about the temperature of AEW, and that is the wrestling, right? So the wrestling will be the same regardless. If you have good wrestling, you have good wrestling. But when you talk about what Max can do, what Netflix is doing for WWE, one of the biggest things is we're talking about the entertainment value of why people want to tune in. So what is that one thing that's missing from AEW to make the entertainment value that says, oh, I need to make sure I put, a brand new trailer of what's going on so people can make sure they watch this trailer on the show, because this show has something that is very entertaining that people are pulling in. And I'm not trying to compare World Wrestling Entertainment being a part of a name versus AEW, but what is the entertainment value that is missing from AEW that will may spark Max wanting to do something more, just to emphasize how important the show is? Do you think AEW needs to do something more on that entertainment value?
Well, I mean, the short answer is corporate synergy. I didn't know that the Last of Us trailer dropped. I've never seen the show. I don't care. But why wouldn't that be something that you would premiere on AEW?
That's true.
Like seriously. I mean, that's easy. That's an easy in-ring thing. You can have somebody come out. I don't know, whoever that guy would be. Have Prince Nana come out and debut the trailer.
I mean, I think there needs to be a level of like partial continuity between whatever it is and whatnot. And I think The Last of Us is,
Barbie. We said that last year.
Yeah, I mean, right, because Barbie spent all the money in the world in their marketing campaign. So yeah,
and none of it hit.
I don't even want to rehash those wounds. I was just saying,
like,
why is Barbie not on this? And what, Oppenheimer as well too? That was both Warner Bros., I believe, right?
I don't know if Oppenheimer was, but Barbie.
I thought it was.
Oh yeah. Well, Barbie 100% was for 100% sure.
Was,
maybe Oppenheimer was. I forget. But it doesn't matter. It's the two biggest movies, two of the biggest movies of the year that came out the same week, and you just wonder and wish that they had did a little bit more. To the point that I'm going to turn the page a little bit here, and let's talk a little bit about the pay-per-view itself. Again, my strategy, I peep in for the show, the matches I want to see, which means I'm keeping an eye out on. Typically, my strategy, in case y'all want to have, my strategy is I watch all the free stuff, and then I keep an eye out on when it hits the pay-per-view, and then I keep an eye on social media so that I know what matches and where they're at with the matches, and then after that, I do my thing, and so I can watch what I need to watch. Need a VPN sponsorship. But nonetheless, starting off with you. First of all, gentlemen, did you all watch this? Did you watch it live, or did you watch it after the fact? Or did you not watch it at all? Let's start there.
I didn't watch it. Read some stuff on it, but did not watch it. I wasn't even intrigued to watch it. Honestly, it was not on my radar. I didn't really, I'm gonna use Jamal's words. I didn't care.
Short answer is I didn't watch it. I do what I usually do is just check what the results are in the morning on my way to work.
Okay. Yeah, I watched a few matches. I'm a big Swerve fan, so I definitely checked out that. He continues to be hot. I wasn't worried about what Swerve was going to do. I'm still the verdict is out on Ricochet, and his transition to AEW. Will we see
Still
something
sad.
more? Or will we see something of the past? And I think what's interesting to what you said, Sellers, about Swerve being one of the products that came over to AEW and the system did him right.
Yep.
I think there is a night and day difference between what I would feel Swerve on the elite level and folks that are trying to carve their path out to that level of stardom. And the gap right now between Swerve and Ricochet it's just not even close. So
it's astronomical.
Yeah. So I watched the match and I was just like, yeah, I expected the results the way it was. Of course, Swerve won. He becomes the #1 contender. And him going for Moxley, I think that is the match.
Please,
all the
Swerve,
way.
save us. Save us.
Yes. But solid match. Now the other match I watched was the Okada Brody King, because I'm like, so was sort of, first of all, Brody King with a high profile match on a pay-per-view in the singles run, and obviously we know because formerly known as Aleister Black, could it be going back to WWE? But Okada, they spent a nice penny on him, and all the razzle dazzle from everything he's done in New Japan. I still don't think he's gained his traction, but I was definitely looking to see Brody King make a name for himself. I thought the match was okay, a little underwhelmed. I did not watch the tag match, which apparently was next. Which I did came in for the Toni Storm and Mariah May match, which was the match of the night. For what I've seen, looked online, people definitely agreed that this was the match that stole the whole pay-per-view. So I did miss a little bit of it, but nonetheless, here's my thing. I don't know which one of these women is more hungry, or do they just keep elevating each other? Because what they're doing, sort of this very organic synergy to elevating the presentation, the promo, the use of I almost say the use of social media, but the use of other platforms, like them having a little moment at the red carpet for Queen of the Ring, which Toni Storm is starring in, which, by the way, if you haven't seen that film, I would say check it out. Of the likes of the folks, for the folks that was keen on Iron Fist, I won't say it was as heavy as heavy in terms of the emotional toll of Iron Fist, but it definitely tells a very good story. I had some minor issues with it, but nonetheless still worth watching. I will say one thing too. Camille also starring in the film, Toni Storm starring in the film, and although they did have the director have multiple appearances with AEW, I feel like maybe that could have totally been a bigger deal, because you have 2 movie stars and what could be one of the biggest movies of the month. I feel like that was a little underwhelming in terms of how they did, but nonetheless, they did utilize that in order to get this to continue the story. But I just gotta say, like, I think right now Toni Storm has been on a tear. Brian May has been on a tear. It doesn't even matter who wins or who has the championship. I think the two of them are truly becoming the top stars in AEW.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
Mercedes Moné was on that card, by the way, but I don't think there's anything to talk about with.
But she's the CEO, so it's okay. Well, let me ask you this: the question that I posed to Will last week was, should the Storm May match main event? And the internet seems to think that it should have. I thought that it should have last week. And based on the reaction that I'm seeing from it, the clips that I've seen from it, I think it absolutely should have closed the show, especially considering that Moxley versus Cope being the main event, and the post-match interaction wasn't necessarily something that was. They could have still done the post-match interaction, but it didn't hit the same as the finality of Toni Storm versus Mariah May.
Yeah.
Now, there's so many different opportunities that, for whatever reason, Khan doesn't necessarily capitalize on. And these are some things that we see ahead of time, some things we go, damn, should have caught that. And he has a team around him to that's obviously should be looking after what the product is going after. You have Toni Storm, you have Mariah May, arguably the best feud in the company right now. And, they go 15, 12, 13 minutes according to the timestamp. And then, that's it. When the match itself in a vacuum is arguably the match of the year for AEW.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the fact that it doesn't main event, does it hurt the match? No. But realistically, as we've come to understand how the show is laid out, the best thing should go last. That's the thing that people wanted to see. And yet, here we are. It's Moxley versus Cope. And apparently Christian lost his Money in the Bank opportunity, which is another squandered opportunity because Christian was doing yeoman's work with the briefcase.
Yeah, Christian has been hot. And you don't want to be WWE because you think when you have your whatever the equivalent of it is called from the Money in the Bank, you think this is guaranteed world championship cash in, and it's not. And I do feel the gimmick with these type of contracts, briefcases, when not cashed in to win, is legitimately the momentum crusher of all time. If you play any video game, if you played any video game and you get your ultimate and you don't actually get the win, the kill, the momentum shift, you're just like, damn. And I feel like it's sort of the same aspect with it. It's just and granted, I have not really been interested in Christian in years, and his work in AEW has been really good. Really, really, really good, to the point that I was kicking myself like, I can't believe I'm invested into, at the time, feeling like the biggest heel in pro wrestling. And for him to not have that payoff, I don't know what the decision behind it was. Is Mox that just much hotter to do so? I'm not a fan of Cope, Adam Copeland, formerly known as Edge. The nickname, the long, the short version, I'm just not a fan of it.
Work.
I definitely thought that Christian could save this, and it just didn't go either their way. It goes directly back to Mox to Swerve, which I hope it goes back to Swerve, and maybe that's the thing to save all of this.
Save us, please.
So yeah, I just to top off my last point, like just how amazing the Toni Storm Rye May match was, and blood everywhere, seeing them work the way they did. Yeah, I don't know what's next, but damn sure looking forward to it for both of them.
But okay, so let's just go alternate universe. Harley Cameron wins in Australia. She gets her hometown pop. It's a moment. Maybe you could argue that she doesn't deserve to win it at that time, but let's just, for the sake of the argument, go with that. They still have Toni Storm versus Mariah May. The match still is what the match is. It's just not for a title. Cameron gets to go off, and the belt elevates her for right now. And and then goes on from there. And you can do super hot babyface Harley Cameron versus whoever the heel they're trying to establish. Toni and Mariah, they need a break after this. They don't have to run into the next big thing, which apparently that's going to be Megan Bayne. And the crowd went mild. So, and I like Megan Bayne, but it's hard to, that's a tough spot for her to be in, to be the very next feud after the feud of feuds for the year. Yeah. So if we get to sit up here and go, damn, I think they could really get something if they pivot a little bit, instead of doing exactly what everybody thinks they're going to do. They do that thing. It goes exactly the way everybody thinks it's going to go. And you're like, okay. I mean, sure, we got a great match out of it between Mariah May and Toni Storm. And it ended as it had to. And then we move on to the next thing because we knew that was going to happen. And then it's like, and this is the problem that AEW has had from the beginning. They can book a great title chase, but they can't book a champion. And we know
that part, and I don't mean to cut you off. And I think that may be some of the biggest issue why AEW has been struggling, not just the women's side, but the men's side too. Like, for example, think about when Chris Jericho, I think, was like one of the first champions. It's nobody could get over, like, you book a feud, but you're scared to pull that trigger to say, okay, let this person be that next person to go over. So I'm glad you said that. But go ahead.
ROH is still apparently having that problem.
Yeah.
But that's a Khan thing, though. That's like Khan's MO of, nah, this is the guy, this is what we're going to go with, and that's what it's going to be. And I think that there's certain moments you have to realize that, you know what, we're going to course correct a little bit. I know I have the plan, but the people are telling me something different. Let's go with this.
Yeah.
And the thing is that AEW is still so young compared to even TNA.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're still so young. They're still in their infancy. They still have this time to make mistakes. They've made it 5 years. That's longer than ECW. That's longer than WCW. That's longer than, you know, most things that tried to come to TV, you know, and so on. But I want them to take a little bit more risk, calculated risk, but still risks. And you can argue why that's not the case anymore, because, you know, they have to appease the Warners. You know, they have to appease the audience. But then which is more important? Appeasing corporate or boosting your ratings?
Yeah, well, it's definitely corporate.
Right. So the ratings be damned. And they're doing some of their worst numbers in their history right now.
Yeah.
You can't blame it on COVID. You
but
can't
boosting
blame it on the
ratings with
roster.
only 3 wrestlers that you can advertise out of a roster of 50, which is hurting, and so many missed opportunities for wrestlers that these guys aren't getting any younger. So are you wasting their opportunity to primes?
It's again, I tip my hat to Tony Khan for remaining positive, because he always talks very adamantly about his partners at Warner Brothers Discovery, and he speaks nothing but positivity about them.
Goddamn well better.
But the proof is in the pudding here, because you could just tell divisions aren't aligned. It just should not have taken so long for them to solidify the deal for it to get the streaming thing. I mean, people have been tracking it for years. Like, when they gonna go to Mass? What's Mass gonna look like? And there's been so many roundabout ways for them to get the product out. You know, Bleacher Report Live to the deals overseas and whatnot. So, like, has it truly been a good partnership? Well, no. But I can't say that, because they still did cut me a check for my weekly television thing. So I'm kind of in like a hostile situation of like, if I pull out, where do I go? Especially with WWE marking territory across the board. You start looking at NBC Universal or Comcast. You're not going in that direction. You're not going to Netflix. A&E, who is under, is that also under Warner Bros. Discovery?
I think so.
I think so.
Is there any? I'm not sure if they are, but maybe.
But A&E is a separate thing, because Discovery Networks, they were not a part of that.
Correct.
But this, that's right. And then and then Tubi, which is Fox, which is Disney, which is just a whole other separate thing. Which, by the way, even before that, Disney with the Hulu deal.
No, I think Tubi is Fox, like actual News Corp Fox, and not Disney.
Oh, so 20th Century.
No, that's a separate company.
20th Century is with Disney. I'm getting confused. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
But I think Tubi is a Fox corporate station
Mm-hmm.
network. In the same vein as
places left. I mean, you have Amazon, that's probably still available, and you have Apple, but they don't have television. And could you have worked the deal in the way of Netflix? Maybe, but I don't think they were willing to take that bet, considering there wasn't enough proof in the pudding to see it work. So, like, you ran out of options, and luckily you ran out of options having a good option, just not a good partner.
Yeah.
So
I said it before, and I'll say it again. I think AEW embedded with CBS, which is a much better fit. CBS has Showtime. We know that Showtime can do live pay-per-view. They've done it for 30 years with boxing. CBS has its networks. Their audiences do skew older, so it would be something of CBS to get interested in, to get a younger audience in. And, of course, it's major network television. I don't know what the numbers for the CW NXT shows have been, but I do know it's got to be among the biggest things that they are broadcast a week other than live sports. So that would have been cool to see, you know, Dynamite on CBS on Wednesdays live, you know. But either way, this is part of the growing play. I refuse to believe that, you know, hubris is the hill that Khan will die on. But I think that this is part of the growing pains, part of the maturation of the company. And we can see that he's definitely been brake checked a couple times where he wanted to do a thing and he has his philosophy, and money came through and said, nah, we're not doing this anymore. This is not financially responsible, because if that were the case, Ring of Honor would be on right now and not 2 a.m. It would, if that were the case, then he wouldn't have to cut so much and streamline so much. There's rumors that AEW wants to merge not the Intercontinental, but the Continental and the International titles, which arguably should happen, and make the actual Intercontinental Championship that we thought we were getting. But they're definitely tightening their purse strings a little bit, as we've seen them streamline their roster, not re-sign a bunch of people that have been there, and then of course tightening up the belts, streamlining their production value, stepping it up in some ways, but definitely making it more consistent in others. And I don't know if these austerity measures are because they're looking at the books and going, uh-oh, or if it's because this is part of the presentation that the Warners are doing, because they're not spending any extra money on anything. So if you want help for it, it ain't going to come from Atlanta. So they got to figure that out.
Let's move on. But the one thing I want to say is that the one thing Warner Bros. Discovery is good at identifying is these sorts of reality show productions that are lucrative, but doesn't cost a lot for them to produce, or in this case, they don't have to produce. So when they look at the identity that works for them, they're like, oh, hell yeah, we'll take it. But again, if you're a businessman looking at the numbers, you obviously look at your competitor, what they're getting. You're like, yeah, we may not have been around much longer, but look at our talent. Look at where they came from. And also look at our library, and look at this extra library I have. I think we should be around this ballpark. They're like, no, you are this type of show. This is what we can offer. Sorry. He's like, nope, that's not going to work for me. I'll come back later. Oh, nothing hasn't changed. Actually, things have gotten worse because we're even more broke. So that deal we once had on the table doesn't seem to go. It won't be the same. At least, again, these are just major speculations in terms of why it took so long to get to the point they did, and why we see shifts in the product to make them a little bit more marketable or useful, or just essentially more of what Khan's vision is outside of what Warner Bros. Discovery is expecting. I just want to go to NXT Roadblock, which was just last night. Big night for NXT. NXT continues to thrive.
Yes,
in my opinion. Because the synergy between NXT and TNA is alive, well, and healthy. And I think we all can agree with that. Matches such as
that up.
Because he did not value them. That's the thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I don't care. This is no speculation. But listen, if you valued me, you're not going to cut commercials like you're the kingpin on my brand to belittle me. It just doesn't work that way. First of all, I you know what?
I forgot about that jacket.
Huge shout out to Scott D'Amore for never taking the low road here. Because at some point, after you came from under Hootie and them, Hootie and the Blowfish Anthem folks, you would have think first thing he would have said was, I have a tell-all. Because that's just what the business is. Every single person that is released, fired, whatever, when they get the bag, the black trash bag, they got something to say. Carmella right now, and the list goes on. And he had nothing to say. But I swear to God, if I was him, that would be the first thing I would have addressed. Let me tell you about that AEW deal and how fucked up it was. But anyway, from the consumer standpoint, it just was just complete trash. There was no respect for the talent. Even though these talents are friends and even partners with some of the folks in your roster, you just went over there and shit on them. So that's how he fucked it up. Nothing else matters. I know this was all about making Kenny Omega the belt collector, but let's just be honest now. If you even know about 10% of Kenny Omega, you know the wrestling gimmick he's on board for, but nothing business-wise where he ever would have said, I need this to stunt TNA's growth so that they get nothing out of this. Not one bit. Nonetheless, Ethan Page, Javon Evans, street fight. I watched this. This dude, Javon Evans, is lights out. But Ethan Page,
Sick.
man, I've always been a fan of his. And seeing him work in all three companies now and still working at a high rate, I wish he had gotten a little bit more time in AEW to really shine. But the moments he did, great. The North, one of my favorite tag teams of that period. And now him in the singles run, being one of the premier talent on NXT. I love it. Moose and Obafemi, I mean, as much as this is about Oba, I got to say this is a lot for Moose for me because I have definitely been a very biased Moose fan. I do not get in anybody's personal life, so I don't want to hear anything about this and that. Now, I don't care about that. It's the wrestling aspect. He is from the DMV.
Yep.
And regardless of what you feel about him and the things he's saying, blah, 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 his hands have been pretty much clean as far as I know, because we haven't heard of him being sort of reprimanded for actions currently that is affecting his ability to get into the ring and do what he does. So for him to go in here and work Oba and to be sort of gracious for the opportunity, but also because Moose is a vet. Don't get it twisted.
He is.
But he put over Oba in a way that you're just like, how long has he been wrestling? It's got to be 2 years max. So I look at that and I said, this is good. Jordan Grace, what can we say? We've been fans of her since. Yeah,
she got a moment. She had a moment.
Yeah, that was
another one.
It's funny. You know what? It's really interesting that Roxanne, and it must just be about where folks sort of grew up at, because it's hard for me not to believe that Roxanne did not inspire to be somebody like Jordan Grace. And the reason I say that is because Jordan, I believe, started working at 16, I believe.
Something like that.
And since then has been working full throttle. And obviously it has really shaped and became in the best shape of her life. But let's just make this very clear. Her wrestling has always been amongst the best in any locker room she's ever been in. And I would say the same about Roxanne. I think, somebody who started very young and danced around a couple of different locker rooms and worked in premier spots, should I say. I mean, if Jordan had been at NXT a little bit longer, you would have to look at Jordan in the same way you look at Bailey, in the sense of like, this is definitely sort of an acknowledgement to that younger generation and how really skilled the gaps are between both. Like, it's a crisp match. And in a way, you can almost even say this is a dream match. I know there's not much of that left.
It works so well together.
Yeah, can somebody really check? Have they wrestled on the Indies? It's got to be a yes, but it doesn't quite stick out to me when and where. But look at this. You said this is a dream match, and they completely showed up. Did not disappoint. I need so much more Jordan Grace, but yeah, I still want so much more Roxanne because they haven't even unleashed her as the ultimate babyface yet, and we know that's so much. Yeah, it's coming. It's money to be cashed in. It's the next Bailey for many, many years because she's still so young. But I mean, yeah, absolute dream match. And Jordan's a beast.
One of the things I want to add to real quick, I think what made Roadblock so good was the right person got the decision for the win in each one of the matches. And that deals with, like, if you talk about the long-term booking, because Jordan Grace lost the last time she, wrestled Roxanne Perez. And then when you think about Javon Evans have taken some losses, to Ethan Page up until this point. So when you think about the winnings that have come up to this long-term measures of how WWE have developed, kind of what we've been talking about AEW, the right person won. Even the Obafemi, even though he's much, much younger in the tank as far as wrestling skills, ability compared to Moose, but having somebody like Moose have him go over was something that was great. So just the right decisions were made in each one of the matches where you did not negate the development of each person in NXT. So I loved it. I loved it on that.
Yeah. So my question was, don't you think that this was kind of like what you would want your veterans to do. You had Fraxium versus the Hardy Boys. You had Jordan Grace versus Roxanne Perez. Even though Jordan's only a few years older than her, she's been wrestling a lot longer. You have Obafemi versus Moose. You have Jay Malachi versus Ethan Page. And the only one that's not a proven ground match, so to speak, is Stephanie Vaquer versus Julia.
Yeah.
So the other 4 matches were like, so we have these veterans. This shit is established. And even though not every match was, the younger guys getting put over, obviously we know that certain things had to happen because they were for the TNA tag titles or for the NXT championship or whatever.
Correct.
It was still to the point of the kids got a chance to shine, but you also built the card knowing that these veterans are coming through.
Yep.
And then, of course, you have something new on the table between Stephanie Vaquer and Julia, which is a new match for American audiences. That whole 360 scope of building the card for, honestly, not even a takeover event. This was just a special show, which could have been a takeover event. And honestly, bring that back. Bring over takeover. Bring back in your house. But the point is that, I like what they were doing with that. And that's kind of where the next step for NXT is. We see a lot of the guys come down that are not being used and, get involved in a program here and there. We see, this synergy with TNA coming through, people getting involved with programs here and there. So it's not just well, who are they? Oh, they're good. When are they going to go to the main roster? It's like, who are they? When a spot opens up, I can't wait to see what they do on the main roster. And that's a very different feeling than a couple years ago, especially on the back of the Tubi show. That is like the actual level up. The Tubi show being involved, that's actually the level up what NXT used to be as far as this is where you cut your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
So good on NXT for just taking another step towards evolving into the next version of that show. I respect it.
Yeah, at this point now, and we're getting ready to wrap up the show tonight. The ball is in TNA's hand to really work on a deal that makes the synergy between these two shows a little more fluent. So that they can really gain the much needed exposure, but also sort of the traffic through it. First of all, the social media team, whoever they are, put them in your lawyer's room to negotiate your contract because the way they be on things, they be having the clips queued up. They got the response to whatever's happening. I mean, they're just on it. And I mean, to the point I'm making is that like they're so aware of what's happening that there's a benefit to why they post the clips in the way they do, because they understand the synergy between, if that match is happening, maybe we can make people be interested in the legacy of it, the story behind it, the history that got to this point, which is cool for the folks who wants to be historians. But what about the people that's living in the moment right now? So when you're done watching NXT, you want to go on Thursday to say, where will this story go next? We live in a time where every single thing we consume, we want it in the universe. We want it to have a connection, a measure of synergy, a measure of continuity across all media. Everything matters. This is where at times the juggernauts such as DC and Marvel have failed when they realize that you can't have, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on television and then the movie comes out and there's no connection. And then they absolutely went full tilt and said, yeah, that episode that's going to come out on a week that the movie comes out, we're going to make sure we perfectly place it so that you understand that once you watch the movie, you need to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. next week because it's going to be some measure of a nod to it. And then they had to get the rights to all their other properties because we need it all in one place. It was the goal. And DC does it very good and make sure everything's canon or at least connected, from the video games to the animation to the DCU. And although there's Elseworld stories and whatnot, which still works, but like there needs to be a measure of connection, because if it's not, then we're hungry for it. I mean, I'm not going off on a tangent here, but like the Robert Pattinson Batman, although it's been very clear that it is an Elseworld story, everybody still's asking, could this be the Batman in the Superman universe for James Gunn, because they want it and they wanted to all connect. And I think that's super important as you start to tell stories across the board in WWE to NXT, which, you know, Jamal, I mean, you've been overly critical of this for years about, is NXT a third brand or a developmental? I think it's very definitively clear, as long as, and I've been thinking this much longer than they have acknowledged it, it is a third brand. And when you do watch the main roster, you do get a commercial about what's happening in NXT. You do get the nod about where these people came from, what they've done in NXT. So that the next day when you do watch NXT, you're just like, and then you get a commercial about SmackDown. You're like, I gotta watch that. TNA is right there in the middle. Right there in the middle. It's just, where do you watch it at? And it's easy for folks to get to it. Is it live? Is it pre-recorded? You got to treat yourself as if you are WWE light. and it's bad because we just said AEW needs to find their identity. TNA has their identity. They need to find their damn placement. They need to get into place and lay roots. Stop living living on your boy's couch from month to month. Get you a place. That's what needs to happen, because goddamn, if y'all ain't hot, y'all just don't even know it.
Yeah,
don't even know it.
The potential there for TNA to really step out on its own, and we thought, and every time we think they're going to do it, they do it for 6 weeks, and then they go right back into the hole.
Yeah,
of just taping in Nashville for a year and then, going with it. Yeah, I don't know.
But give me a bottle of that Brazilian juice, because goddamn, if a lot of us don't need that right now. These motherfuckers are roaches, man. They will not die.
They will not.
These roaches with animanium in their wings or whatnot. They just won't die forever.
Yeah, so, TNA is forever. Put that on a t-shirt. You're welcome.
That actually
that fits. Fits.
Seriously.
Jamal H is his name.
Big Old Media.
Yeah, you heard it here. Timestamp and everything.
live, not recorded.
And tell you what, they're going to weather the storm with Tessa Blanchard.
100%.
It will no longer be a thing. I give it one more super strong month of her being heavily featured, and it just won't be a thing anymore. People are going to just turn the eye on it and say she wrestles, and they put her in a prominent spot for me to really care, and she can stop coming out there being the super villain and just be the heel.
And you know what? We've seen, like, obviously the situations are radically different, but if CM Punk can do it, the precedent has already been set.
100%.
Just go out there, don't break anything, do your job, and go home.
Yep, 100%.
I don't see why not.
Anyway, that'll do it. I know we had a lot to talk about tonight, so one thing I'm gonna quickly say before we wrap up is WWE 2K25 is a review for that. We'll be dropping soon. Talk about my thoughts about the game here. Much better than last year.
Good.
They're doing a lot of work. There's been numerous patches put out since having it, but I definitely think this is the My Rise is dope. That's what I would say.
Cool.
Movies wise, I'll start off first. I'm not sure what the fellas have seen. Novocaine, pleasant surprise.
I want to see it. It intrigued me. When the trailers.
Great. That's better than me, because I'm like, Jack Quaid in action film. Yeah, no. Yes, Huey from The Boys. He's fantastic. The film is a lot of fun. I will highly recommend it. I say Queen of the Ring. I did see that review is out. Interview available as well too. Good movie. Definitely had some minor issues, and I will be a little biased in saying my issues I had. It was interesting because the director addressed them in our interview. I didn't even ask, but it was about the music selections and not being so relevant to the times and sort of modernizing it on that note. But that's no here nor there. The performances is good. There's a lot of cameos, but ultimately, just the story alone is definitely worth a watch there. Especially want to know about the history of women's wrestling in the territory days and really how they made their own path. And I believe that will do it for my content I've seen. Jamal, you or Sellers, anything seen to speak on?
Yeah, a couple of things. Yeah, for the kids, the Looney Tunes movie, The Day the Earth Blew Up. First time that they've come out with something in a while. Again,
wait. Brothers. I heard that is, this can't be true. Is it truly the first animated feature-length film from Looney Tunes?
I don't think it's the first feature-length film, but it's definitely the first one in
theaters
in theaters forever, because they've come out with feature-length made-for-television movies. But either way, it's in theaters. You wouldn't have known it if you were watching Dynamite, but because, Warner Brothers, come on now. If you haven't seen, Black Bag, Steven Soderbergh's movie, which I hear good things about, I'm definitely seeing this weekend. Novocaine, I'm seeing this weekend. And then, of course, that will get you ready for next weekend, and Snow White. Save us, Swerve. Save us.
I'm gonna go to streaming route. But once again, I want to plug something that was plugged at the Oscars. Just for those who are movie lovers, please make sure you continue to experience in the theater. We want to make sure we save our theaters to make sure you're going in watching these movies there. But I am going to go the opposite that of a streaming route. One movie I'm going to check out this weekend is 1992, Tyrese and Ray Liotta's last movie. I want to see that. I was intrigued by it. I want to check it out. So 1992 is going to be on Star. So
that's a good place to watch it.
Yeah, it is.
It's a good. Stars is a good place to see it. Yeah.
Trying to support Ray Liotta. Rest in peace.
No doubt. I believe Tyrese got served on the red carpet when that was happening some time ago. The child support thing. But I like Tyrese, especially when he's in Fast and Furious. But that's all. Really, before I know we need to wrap up, but I want to get this tag of the day the Earth blew up. Right, I'm pretty sure I seen something on the lines of it being, where was it at? I don't know.
The first feature length. Well, maybe it's the first theatrical release.
Okay, it says the Rich Graven hand-drawn 2D adventure marks the first fully animated feature-length film in Looney Tunes history.
It's interesting.
That is
all these
mind-blowing.
years. All these years.
Yep. I'm looking at it right now in the synopsis and given. I got to get a screener of it, so I haven't seen it in the theaters, but it says hand-drawn 2D animated adventure marks the first fully animated feature-length film in Looney Tunes history.
Interesting.
So anyway, that's what we do here. We make sure we cover the pro wrestling, the graps, but we also got to talk a little bit about the movies and film and television, all that good stuff. So that being said, folks, each and every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can hang out with us talking pro wrestling. You can also join us on all the socials to interact during the conversation live. Catch us on the replay on all audio podcast platforms. Until next week, we appreciate y'all coming through. We'll see y'all back. Be safe, folks.